All right, everybody. Well, welcome to our webinar today, our Embraer Learning webinar. Today's session is Feedback is as Easy as SBI. So we're going to learn a tool that I've been using for years. It might not be new to you. You might have heard of this before, or maybe heard of it in a different form. But it's a really simple way of making sure that you give really well-rounded feedback to people. So with that, a little housekeeping first, of course. So I asked everybody to mute your microphones, disable your video. I think we've all done that. We are recording this so that we have the ability to share this with our coworkers that were not able to attend today. And this will be in Empower in the next hour or so. I ask that you all silence your phones and disregard your email inbox for the next half hour or so. I would like to ask for your full attention. I think that this is a session, a topic that I think is well worth your 20 to 30 minutes of your time. So make sure to just throw the phones out and turn off your email for a little while. Grab a pen and paper, take notes. We are going to have a Q&A at the end of the session, a little bit of time to chat. I would love to hear your feedback. I'd love to hear how you've used how you've given feedback in the past. And as always, just a reminder, we're going to have a post-session survey. I'm not going to have the QR code at the end of the session. Instead, I'll just send you an email with the link. So please, please, please click that, take 2 to 3 minutes, give your feedback, let me know other topics you'd like to see, because we always like to make sure that we're sharing what we can with you, the stuff that you're really looking forward to. So feedback. If you all, maybe you've heard of Ken Blanchard. He's the author of 1 Minute Manager. In his book, he states that feedback is information about the past given in the present to impact the future. I love this definition. I think it's really well-rounded and shares the true meaning of feedback, which is you're hoping to impact the future. You're not just giving it to give it. You've got a meaning behind it. You're looking for either a change that you're trying to help somebody through a change, or you're helping them understand that what they're doing is awesome and they should keep doing it. So who do you give feedback to on a regular basis? Usually it'll be your team, right? Your direct reports, your peers, your manager, maybe the people that you work with daily. But you might also be giving feedback to your children or your friends or your spouse. Anyone that you come in contact with, you can use this tool to make sure that you're giving good, well-rounded feedback. So the reason I have this slide is just to share with you that, yes, this is being shared with you in a professional forum, through Embraer, and this is the official way of giving feedback. It's the Embraer way of giving feedback, but you can definitely use this at home. It's you can use it anywhere you're connecting with somebody else. The challenge that we face, though, is that we have this generic feedback. We always, we're very general in our feedback, and we're not always doing it to support the future. We have this general idea about we want to be positive and give feedback, so we do a verbal pat on the back, a hearty good job. But what was that for? Actually, what was the reason you gave me a pat on the back? It's nice, and it's better than no feedback at all, but we can do better at giving others feedback. And it's not always easy to give feedback. Giving honest and real feedback is not very often a very easy thing to do. Have you ever given feedback and then walked away from that person not sure if they really heard your message, they heard what you had to say? And let me flip the page there. What about getting feedback? That can be tough too. And even when you're in the right mindset to receive the feedback, have you ever given or taken the feedback and then wondered what was that? What just happened? Well, it's probably because somebody, the person giving the feedback or you giving feedback, you're not using a specific tool. You're just kind of going off the top of your head, and you're probably being, oh yeah, that's great. That pat on the back is that positive feeling. And I personally think, and I've seen that others think this too, that we give this generic feedback because we're taught at an early age to let people know that they did a good job. Now, that's not a bad thing, but who here has heard from a parent or a family member, that when you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all? I know that my grandmother, this was her mantra. When you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. And so I lived that for a very long time because that's what she had to say, and you listen to your grandmother. The problem with that is, how does that help people? Especially when it's at work. You sometimes need to give the constructive feedback. Now, you might have heard this one, the feedback sandwich. Back in the 80s, 1980s, some of you may remember, some of you may not have been born yet, but there's that feedback sandwich where I've heard somebody say, oh, I heard that as the feedback Oreo, whatever you want to call it. It's positive feedback followed by negative feedback, followed by more positive feedback. And why was this created this way? Well, it's because somebody didn't want to give just the negative feedback. They wanted to fill it up with positive feelings too. And I get where that's coming from, but at the end of the day, does that help the person you're giving the feedback to? So research has actually shown over time that this tool doesn't really work. It's actually, it gives the reverse effect. So if you say, hey, Doug, I'm going to pick on you, Doug. Hey, Doug, you are an awesome team member, and I love working with you. Your smiles all around. Now, I do have to share with you that yesterday when you screamed at that person in the meeting, that really wasn't very good. But overall, hey, doing a great job. Keep up the great work. Well, what's Doug walking away from with this, right? He's hearing all this positive stuff, and he's not thinking so much about that negative, screaming at the person, right, Doug? Does that sound about right?
Yep, I didn't even hear that.
Yeah.
Did you say something about screaming? I should scream more.
Exactly. That's the challenge. Is you hear the positives, and when you put that negative in between the two, you'll lose that. So if you're doing the feedback sandwich, it's understandable. It's something that we've been doing for all our lives, but you might want to start getting away from the sandwich and doing something a little bit different. So, putting my psychology hat on, I question, why do we fear giving feedback? And here's the thing, we're all human. Many of us don't want to give negative or constructive feedback because we don't want others to see us unfavorably. We always, for the most part, we are, being human beings, we want to be on someone's good side. And the thing that you've got to keep in mind is feedback, if done well, can actually be very positive, regardless of the fact that the feedback that you're giving is positive or negative. Negative feedback can, when shared properly, can actually give someone constructive suggestions that they can use to improve themselves in the future. So when you're thinking about giving this negative feedback, remember that, some people call feedback a gift. And you could see it that way. Actually, I think even in our MyMBrere, in our system, you can give the gift of feedback. You click the word, the box gift, and you can give feedback to somebody. And that's great, but just make sure that you know why you're doing it. And it's because you want to help that person get better at what they're doing. So what can you do to ensure that? Well, I'm going to start off with, which way should you go? Is this, are you doing positive feedback? Are you doing constructive or negative feedback? I found this quick video from Dr. Tasha Eurich, and I think she just sums it up so nicely. I wanted to share it with you. She's the author of Bankable Leadership, and let's hear what she has to say.
So I I don't know about you, but one of the scariest things I can hear from another person is, do you mind if I give you some feedback? In our day and age, most of the time when those words are uttered, they are preceding some very poorly delivered feedback. And as a result, a study that was done by Development Dimensions International found that most people dread receiving feedback at work more than paying taxes, a bad hangover, and even a speeding ticket. There are typically two mistakes that leaders make when delivering ineffective feedback. The first is the overly people-focused or left-side leader. This is a person that doesn't want to hurt employees' feelings, and as a result gives copious amounts of positive feedback and is scared to death of any other type of feedback. The second mistake that I see are leaders who only give quote-unquote constructive feedback, which is usually code for here's what you did wrong. These are leaders that want to ceaselessly improve the way things are, but in providing that constantly critical feedback, they actually decrease performance because they erode employees' confidence. So the mistakes leaders make when giving feedback are abundant. In fact, in one study that looked at annual performance appraisal conversations, which PS are designed to improve performance, the researchers found that in 30% of cases, that conversation decreased performance. Think about that for a minute. The only explanation they could provide was that the feedback was being delivered so ineffectively that it shot their confidence, and they were thus unable to be better the next time. So when delivering feedback ineffectively, I usually see two mistakes. On the left-hand side of the spectrum, the overly people-focused leader loves to give positive feedback. You did this great, you did that great, but in a situation where honest and constructive feedback is needed, they're afraid, so they don't give it. The problem with that is that most employees crave honesty, and they need to have that feedback so they can improve. On the right side of the equation is the overly results or improvement-focused leader, who gives only quote-unquote constructive feedback. That's usually code for, here's something I'll point out that you did poorly. The problem with this, even though it's intended to improve that person's performance in the future, is that it takes away their confidence. And think about the last time someone criticized the things that you did. It really prevents you from being successful in the future. So the best feedback should be no fear. No fear for you in giving it, and no fear for your employees in receiving it. The model I like to use, I call 2D feedback. And let me illustrate essentially what that means. So let's imagine that you're driving in your car, and you're driving 60 miles an hour down the highway. You're either driving in the right direction and need to continue where you're going, or you're going in the wrong direction and you might need to get off at an exit and go somewhere different. And that's the 2D feedback model. It stands for two things. One, duplicate. Stay on the highway. Keep doing what you're doing in the future. And two, deviate. You might need to deviate from the route that you're on and do something different. The 2D feedback model is unique in two ways. The first is that it's future focused. I said earlier that pointing out things that an employee did in the past that were wrong doesn't help anyone, especially the employee. So instead, if you focus all of your feedback, be it duplicate or deviate, on what do you want to see the employee doing in the future, you will see infinitely better results. The second reason that the 2D feedback model is unique is that it's behavior-based. It's not very helpful to give employees vague or general feedback, and it's much more important that you tell them specifically what they should continue doing, duplicate, or what they should change, deviate. For example, if I told an employee you are being aggressive in that meeting, it wouldn't be helpful for them at all. But if I told them, in that meeting, you interrupted me 3 times and you pounded your fist so hard on the table that the coffee mugs rattled, then they'll know exactly what behavior they need to change in the future. So I hope this video has given you some valuable insight and initial tools to use to give both duplicate and deviate feedback. For specific step-by-step actions to deliver each of them, I'd like to point you to my book, Bankable Leadership.
Okay, so I really liked that video. So what did you all think of Dr. Urich? Was there anything that was a quick aha moment for you? You can just take your mic off mute really quick and share if you'd like.
Super simple.
Yeah, right? Yeah, I like simplicity, especially when you're giving.
Do it when I'm yelling at a customer, right? I can even do that.
Doug, you might need to, lay off the coffee. Maybe that's what it is. But yeah, exactly. You shouldn't yell at customers. But yeah, it's so simple. You can think of it on the fly, like as you're right in the middle of it, wait, do I need to duplicate or do I need to deviate, right? And I think that's a great complement to the tool that I'm going to share in just a second. But overall, though, I really like the fact that she just broke it down so quickly. If you see on the screen right now, the two mistakes that people make when delivering the ineffective feedback, they're either too people focused or they're excessively constructive, right? The two people focused, I think, goes into that feedback sandwich we talked about, right? Or the if you have nothing nice to say, don't say it at all type of thing. The excessively constructive feedback, that when that's all you hear, then it eventually starts to you drown out. So if that's the only type of feedback you're giving is the constructive or the negative feedback, then people are going to stop hearing from you. So one of the things that I think Dr. Urich in the long run is trying to share is make sure that you're doing a good mix of both to everybody. Oh, and the other thing, just an FYI, is that Dr. Urich in that video, she's talking about working with your employees. But I do want to go back to that first slide that I shared with you all, that yes, it can be with your coworkers, your employees, your manager, but it could be with anyone. And even this, duplicate or deviate, works with anyone. That's always the first thing you should think of is, wait a second here, do I want to have them, do I want to share this information or share this feedback I have for them because I want them to duplicate it or duplicate it in the future, or do I want them to deviate and go with something different? So here's the tool, SBI. And this is for the duplicate. I'm going to show you the deviate in just a second. But SBI, first you have S, describe the specific situation in which the behavior occurred. Then the B is behavior. Describe the real and observable behavior under discussion. Real and observable are, we highlighted that for a reason. You want to just keep to the facts. You don't want to enter your opinions or your judgments, because once you go down that rabbit hole, you lose the feedback and you end up becoming more, you're talking more about criticism. So make sure that it's keeping to the facts, that it's real and observable behavior. And the I is impact. What's the impact that person's behavior had on you, on the team, on the environment, on your family, whatever it may be? So let me give you an example. The S, specific situation. This morning, I say I'm giving feedback to somebody here. Ophelia, I'm giving feedback to you. This morning at around 9:30, I walked by as you were at the coffee station with Bob. Now, just a quick note, I want to share with you, avoid generalities such as last week or all afternoon, because that could be kind of confusing. You want to make sure you're as specific as possible. And that's why I said this morning around 9:30. Ophelia knows now exactly what I'm talking about. The behavior, what's the behavior that I witnessed Ophelia doing? I saw you stopped and you helped Bob get a coffee, which isn't easy for him because of the cast on his arm. Then you offered to help him back to his desk so that the coffee wouldn't spill on the way. What was the impact? Well, that was really thoughtful of you. We all know that Bob has had a tough time over the last week, and that simple act was more helpful to him than you'll ever know. Great job looking out for your fellow coworkers. SBI. Can't be any more simple than that. And so that's the duplicate. That's for positive feedback. What if we're giving constructive feedback? Well, it's still SBI, but we're going to add a letter. So S, you've got this specific situation, B is behavior, I is impact, and then you've got A, which is the action for change. What change do you want to see them take action on in the future if they were to hit the situation again? So again, I'm going to use another example. So Brenda, I'm going to pick on you this time. So Brenda, yesterday at 11, when we were at the staff meeting in room 200, can I get more specific? You might not have to say in the room 200, but making a point here. B, the behavior. Brenda, you started asking questions about next year's budget 5 minutes into my presentation on the action review process. Right, so what was the impact on that? Well, Brenda, due to your interruption, I became frustrated and lost my train of thought as I was presenting. So you took up the time I had to present, and I didn't get a chance to finish, which I needed to share, what I needed to share with the group, which was important for the team in the next week. So what's my action for change? Well, in future meetings, if you have something to ask that isn't on the agenda, wait until the end of the meeting and be understanding of other coworkers' time. So there you go, SBIA. And actually, just a quick note, this is the official way of doing this for the duplicate. One person that I was talking to not long ago said to me, Chris, actually you could use SBIA for the duplicate if you wanted to. The action would be just that you want to see it happen again. And in just, again, give them the positive feedback that, hey, this, you did such a great job. Very well done. I love seeing what you're going to do in the future. So you could actually think of it as SBIA for duplicate and deviate. What are your thoughts, guys? Really quick before I'm going to give you one example, but before we get into that, any thoughts that you want to share?
I think this is really good. Very interesting.
Cool.
One thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Going back to the video, one thing that stuck out was that she said not to focus on kind of like the past. She was like, make it a more future, like where to go from here thing. So I know we're giving an example, but I guess she's saying also try to not dwell on it. But so basically it seems like the action is the key thing, like where to go from here,
Exactly. And that's what Dr. York is talking about. Don't dwell on the past. So of course in this I had to share what happened just now, right?
Right.
Why
to
am
give
I giving
context.
you this?
Yes.
To give context, exactly.
Yeah.
And you want to let that person know what the impact was, because if you don't share that, this is what the outcome was, maybe they don't see that. Maybe Brenda, sorry, I'm picking on you this time, but maybe Brenda walked out of that meeting and went, wow, that was really good. I really got my point across, not thinking about how it affected me. Or if you notice, I say that it's information that needed to be shared with the team for something that was very important over the next week. They didn't get all that information, and therefore we might even have to have another team meeting just to fill them up. Yeah, we have to talk about the past, but the big thing, Christine, is making sure that you're talking about the future. What's the future action? Let's put this behind us. You got my feedback. You heard what I had to say. Let's move forward. So good, thank you. Any other thoughts before I have one quick example for you all, just to make sure, just to bring it home. And it's a fun example. So let me go through this really quick. So let's put this to work. So you're a manager at a zoo. You observe one of your employees feeding the elephants the food that the penguins should be eating, right? Again, this is, fun, lighthearted example, but it gives you an idea of how to put this into action. So first question is, do you want them to duplicate this in the future or deviate from this in the future? I'm thinking we need to deviate, right? So how would you handle this? I'm going to give you an A, B, or C. Once you see them, I'd like for you to, in the chat, type in which you think is the actual choice. So using SBIA. The A, Mike, do they look like penguins? Peanuts go in this food bin, sardines go in that food bin. Get it right. Is it B? Hey, you're doing great. I need to ask that you make sure that you're giving the right food to the right animal, but overall, wow, happy to have you on the team. Or is it C? Mike, 10 minutes ago in the zoo pantry, I saw that you put the penguin sardines in the elephant food bin, and the sardines have a special enzyme that can make elephants really sick, and I don't think we want to clean up after sick elephants. So next time, please double check that you're giving the right food to the right animals. So guys, really quick, is it A, B, or C? And I'm seeing, oh, thank goodness. Oh my gosh, I would have been afraid if I know Doug probably would have gone with the A, but Doug, nicely done.
Just to say, I know I want to keep it serious, but sometimes, what if you had, this is not the first time, right? If it's the first time it happened, you're like, okay. If it's like the 10th time, you know.
And
But
that might be a
anyway,
challenge.
you know, C
Yeah.
is still the better one. But
Yeah, C's overall. It gives you that idea of SBIA, right? And so the other thing just to think about as you're giving feedback is be specific, be timely, and be genuine, right? So be specific. You know, don't do the good job, that general feedback. Explain what you saw. Explain the impact it made, and let others know how their actions impact others positively or negatively. And when it comes to be timely, you know, silence promotes poor behavior. So, as an example, if you see an employee wearing flip-flops to work every day and you don't say anything, eventually that's going to be okay. That person's thinking, well, no one's ever said anything to me, so I guess that's all right, right? You've got to make sure that you share your feedback with somebody and that you're doing it timely. So if you ever find yourself saying, hey, I want to give you some feedback. Last month, well, okay, too late. If it's within, 24 hours, hopefully it's within 24 hours, possibly within 48 hours. But if it's more than 2 days long, unless there's some major outstanding reason for that, it's too late to be giving feedback. You want to make sure it's as timely as possible. The other challenge is, what if you're giving somebody feedback from a week and a half ago? Well, in the meantime, they didn't know that that was something bad to do, and so they're continuing to do it. So, yeah, they did it a week and a half ago, and they've been doing it every day since. Nip it in the bud, right? As Barney Fife would say, nip it in the bud. And be genuine. People know when it's coming from the heart or not. We're hoping that you're giving feedback to people for the right reasons, because you want to see them grow and succeed. You want to see them get better at whatever it is that they're doing. So make sure that you're sharing whether they should duplicate or deviate. And how? Make sure it's face-to-face. I mean, that's always the best thing. Of course, right now it's not as easy. If you have to do it over the phone, maybe a Teams, face-to-face over Teams is helpful, but don't ever do it via email. Giving feedback via email is probably worse than just not giving any feedback at all. You want to make sure that they understand and that you see that they understand. Also, just want to plug our Embraer values cards. If you want to recognize somebody for doing something right, then use an Embraer's values card. It's an opportunity for them to be chosen for the MVE awards, which is great. And you'll even see, actually, if you've done a values card lately, since June, actually, you'll see when I make a note that make sure that it's given in the SBI form. I say specific behavior impact. And then the last thing I want to share is make this the beginning of a conversation, not just the end of the dialogue. This should be the start of a conversation about that challenge. Make sure you follow up with them and say, hey, we had this challenge before, but how are you doing? So, again, looking towards the future, making sure that that person is progressing and that they're learning from the challenge that they had. So I hope you found that the SBIA tool was helpful. This is actually the hard copy version of the tool that I'm going to email you to. Well, it's the electronic version, but it's printable, so you can print it out. I've actually had people print 10, 15 of these and leave them in their desks, and then when they want to give feedback to somebody, they use this to write their thoughts down. Especially if you've got to give feedback to multiple people in one day, and you want to make sure you don't forget anything, then as soon as you think of it, grab one of these sheets of paper and write down what's the S, what's the B, what's the I, what's the A, so that you have it down for when you talk to them later on. So I'm going to email this to you all along with that link to the survey. I hope you find that to be useful. So this is the point where I know we're actually a couple minutes over, and I apologize for that. But what questions, comments, what's your feedback? Have you used
it to be effective and meaningful to our workforce?
All right, guys, with that, I think that we are going to close out the session today. So I hope you found this useful and helpful for the future. Like I said, be on the lookout for that email in just a little while that's going to have the link to the, well, actually, it won't be a link. I'll attach that document, and hopefully you'll be able to use that in the future. Let me know how that goes for you all. I would love to hear, when you use it, how you use it, what challenges you've had, if you've had any challenges with it, because we're always looking to continuously improve. So if there's ever something that you'd like to talk about with that, shoot me an email or give me a call, and I'm happy to chat. So with that, I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and I'll talk to you all hopefully next week. Have a good one.
Thank you, Chris. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Y'all be safe.
Thank you, Grace.